People ask me all the time if I think a real estate crash is coming. And for years I've said no. And then they say something like, what goes up must come down. To which my response is, that's not real estate, that's physics. So why don't I think a real estate crash is coming? One of the reasons I don't think a crash is coming is because we're devoid of the terrible lending practices that we saw way back in 2007, 8, and 9. What you might have had back then, you could in some cases refer to as a ninja loan. No income, no job verification. It's a premise you're familiar with if you've seen the movie The Big Short, which as far as I'm concerned is a documentary. What happened back then was people were getting mortgages that they really couldn't afford. And when you can't afford your mortgage, you lose your house. And when everybody loses their houses around you and they fall into disrepair, that's when the values come down. That's when we start to see a crash. Right now, on a national level anyway, that's not something we're really seeing. One of the other reasons, and kind of an extension of the first reason, is that it's not just the mortgage as much as it is your ability to pay the mortgage. So one thing that happened back in 2008 was unemployment went bonkers. In fact, you had in national levels very near 10% unemployment. 1 out of every 10 people in America not working. My second reason, and maybe really just an extension of the first reason, is that it's not just the size of the mortgage or the lending practices behind that mortgage, as much as it is a person's ability to actually pay the mortgage. So let's talk about one thing that happened a lot in 2008 that impacted people's ability to pay their mortgage, which really was rampant unemployment, where in America we had nearly 10% unemployment, which is not the case now, whereas it's under like 4 or 5%, so about half of what it was back then. So as long as people are working and making income to pay mortgages that they were qualified to get in the first place, theoretically, you should still be able to pay it. Now, I should be clear that we're talking about things on a national level, okay? I know that everybody has an uncle, a sister, a brother, a friend who has probably lost their house to foreclosure. Please understand, I'm not trying to be insensitive to those people, but those are smaller examples, not national trends. And when we're talking about a real estate crash, that's a national trend. So this inability to pay your mortgage, we're not really seeing on the national trend level as much as a couple of isolated pockets of exception level. It's an important distinction to make. Next, housing inventory still remains incredibly low. Guys, it's an economic discussion in real estate, and all we're talking about is supply and demand, one of the most core principles of basic economics. So right now, supply low, demand high. It's hard for a market to crash when supply is low and demand is high. Next on the list is new housing construction, new builds. Not a lot of builds being started right now, okay? Now listen, again, I'm talking about how real estate is being done on a national level, and we're talking about it on a local level. Speaking on my local level, in Rhode Island, there's not a lot of ground anywhere to put a house right now. So locally, southern New England, we're definitely not seeing a lot of new construction starts. That trend is also national, where going back even just 5, 6, 7 years, the number of new starts we have right now is lower. It's not able to keep up with supply and demand. So as long as supply is low and demand is high, like I just said, we're not likely to have a crash. And lastly, guys, we're just not seeing the amount of foreclosures happening right now that we saw before 2008. And foreclosures can be a precursor to an impending crash. Again, I know everybody's got a sister, a brother, a friend, a neighbor who has had a foreclosure. Local exceptions, not national trends. So right now, the national number of foreclosures is not high enough to indicate a real estate market crash. That's why I don't think there's a real estate crash coming. But what do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I stupid? Am I handsome? Let me know. Leave a comment below.